Welcome to the Love and Victory Show with Val, the place to laugh, sip on a little wine, and have open and honest conversation. Here you will find the tools to resolve real life issues. Unwind, pour up a glass, and get ready to exhale. Well, welcome to the Love and Victory Show with Val. I am your host, Val, and I'm so excited to have you on here, Mike. I would love for you to introduce yourself to the to the listeners. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
I'm Mike Iamele. I live in Boston, and I'm really excited to be here today.
Okay, I'm excited to have you. And today we're going to have a conversation with Mike, pulling back the curtains and exposing vulnerabilities. That's interesting. We all have to pull back the curtains sometime. Why don't you tell me what's your thought on this conversation and why is it important for you to have it today?
You know, I think that we've all got vulnerabilities. We've all got places where we're afraid and we're kind of holding on to old definitions of ourselves or old ways of being. And life is happening for us, right? And it's just opening before us. And every moment we have this decision, am I going to be brave enough to move toward or away from love, really? That's the end of the day. And so for me in my journey, it's been making those hard decisions and surprising myself and opening up to new definitions of myself, new identities to choose love.
And you know, one of the things that I think that's so important, and this is love. My husband and I have been together 44 years. Today we're celebrating our 33rd wedding anniversary. I hope I got it right. It's probably wrong, but oh well, the numbers are too high. And love for us when we first started off was not the love that everybody, I'm sure, expected. They probably didn't expect us to last. And so I've learned through our journey that I don't put a box on what love is. I can't tell you who to love, whether you are straight or gay or whatever. And I may be saying the wrong words because I'm not being politically correct. It's not to insult anyone. I just think love meets love, and when it meets it, it just meets it, and it is what it is. It's perfect. So I really wanted to have this conversation with you. It is personal for me. I have a son that is gay. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Yeah, please correct me because I don't know. I'm not trying to offend anyone, but I want to be educated as I have this conversation. Of course. And so I'm definitely open. And I know that I'm from the older generation where that was something that's supposed to be kept under the rug. And one thing that I felt early on, this is my child. I had this child. And if I can't love him for who he is, how can I expect the world to love him? So it was more important for me to just love him as a human being and be there for him and go through that journey, tell him the good and the bad, and he can teach me. And so we have a beautiful relationship. And so we just see him as our son.
I love that. That's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing it with me.
Yes. So let's talk about your journey and coming out and being vulnerable and sharing with others.
Yeah, so my journey is a little unique compared to some other people's. For the early part of my life, I didn't identify as queer, gay, any of that. I had lots of gay friends, so I was very, supportive. I was around lots of queer people, but for whatever reason, I wasn't interested in men, and I had never been with a man. I had only been with women. And then in my mid-20s, I was working at a public relations firm. I actually owned a PR firm at the time, and I woke up one day, and I was vomiting blood. And as you can imagine, it was pretty scary. I didn't know what was wrong with me. And it didn't stop for about 2 months straight. So I vomited blood almost every day for 2 months. It got so bad that I went to work one day and I realized I had to go to the bathroom. So I tried to make it to the bathroom and I didn't make it in time. I had an accident at work. My body was completely shutting down, and I was really afraid I was going to die. I was going from doctor to doctor. They were running tests and biopsies and trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And all this while, I started getting into some radical therapies. I was kind of like, anything, even if I've never heard of it before, I'm going to do it.
I'm going to try it. Yes.
Reflexology, right? Like, I just don't want to die. That is my main thing right here. And so I was doing crazy things. Like I was writing handwritten letters to every member of my family saying everything I've never said out loud.
Oh, wow.
Like crazy vulnerability.
Wow.
I've got to
Wow.
get it out.
I
If
got to
blood's
get it
coming
out.
up,
Yes.
if blood's coming up, I can't stuff anything down. I got to get it all out. And so at this point in my life, I had two roommates who were just two people I knew from college.
Mm-hmm.
One of them was in a relationship and so wasn't home very often. And the other one was this guy I knew from college who was on a pharmacy residency. So he knew
Mm-hmm.
the medical system and he was home during the day. And just by that chance, he became my de facto caretaker. I
Oh.
couldn't drive myself to appointments anymore. I was so sick. He would drive me, he would pick up prescriptions, he would clean up my blood when I
Oh,
was blooding
wow.
and so weak. Eventually, he
Wow.
started cooking meals for me. And a few months into this, I realized I think I'm developing feelings for him. And that was a strange feeling for me at the
Yeah.
time, as you can
Yeah.
imagine. And, to give you some context, there was a part of me that thought, like, am I just afraid I'm going to die and this is a human within proximity? Like, I don't know
That's
if this is
showing me that they care and what's
exactly like,
really going
is
on
this
here.
real? Is this
Yes.
not? And what
Yes.
happens when I do get better? Is this just
Uh-huh.
going to go away? And so finally, because I've been writing these letters and telling everyone everything, I decided I'm going to say something
Mm.
because I could die and I just
Yes.
don't want to be afraid. And so I didn't know if he was going to punch me in the face, if he was going to kick me out, like what's going on here. But I
Yes.
decided I'm going to say something. And so I finally got up the nerve one day and I said, Garrett, his name's Garrett. I said, I don't know how to talk about this because it doesn't feel sexual. It doesn't even feel romantic, but I feel something. This feels like more than
Mm.
friendship. And I just want to talk about that. And I'm very fortunate that Garrett is probably the most thoughtful person in the world.
Wow.
And so he said, okay, it's a lot. I don't know how to handle that, but I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
sit with this. Let me think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended up sending emails back and forth. And I know that sounds
Wow.
funny because we lived in the same
Wow.
home, right?
Yes.
But I think emails, there are a lot of advantages, right? You don't have to see the person's reaction and be afraid. You have time to kind
Mm-hmm.
of collect your thoughts. And so we ended up over the course of a few months emailing and talking about everything. What happens if I get better? Is this real? We don't feel physically attracted to one another. What do we do with that? Are
Mm-hmm.
we still dating women? And
Wow.
so we decided to explore a relationship. And we spent about a year and a half exploring a relationship while we dated women still. So we were only just dating one another and trying to explore if this can work. And at the end of that year and a half, we decided that it did work. We moved in, just the two of us, and that's when we started telling our families. And
Wow. Well, that is a very unique way of starting a relationship. One, you were on your deathbed and you had someone that cared enough about you to say, you know what, I just want to take care of you as a friend. And through that, you developed a love relationship. So I think that you can find love in all the right places. I'm not going to say the wrong places. So I don't know what happened with that relationship, but we're going to talk about that. I do have a question for you. What did you lose by coming out? Or did you lose anything?
yeah, so many things. So I haven't gotten to that part of the story just yet, but I not everybody took it well. Not everybody
Hmm.
handled this
Of
well. So there's
course.
certainly, lost friendships, just changes my family dynamic. Fortunately, everyone got there eventually, and I will
Hmm.
tell you, Garrett and I are still together. We've been together over 10 years now, so we are
Wow.
married,
Congrats.
and
Yes.
so everybody got there, but it took some people some time, and I
Hmm.
understand that. And there was a lot more I lost because this story became a very viral story. And so
Mm.
the next part of the story that I'll share is once we decided to tell our family, I had left my job because, as you can imagine, if you're
Yeah.
vomiting blood, probably not a good job to stay in.
Right.
And
Right.
so I had left my job in that time. I gave a year's notice. Never
Mm.
recommend anyone doing that, but I
Wow.
owned this company. I felt like it was the right thing to do to put them in a
Hmm.
good spot. And so I really was trying new things. I became kind of herbalist and health coach to Boston's tech entrepreneurs because I got
Okay.
really sick. I didn't want these people to get sick, so I thought I
Oh.
can help them. And I hated it. I gotta be honest with you.
Okay.
Hated that job. I
Hate
thought,
it.
crap, Mike. You gave up all this money. Like, you gotta
To
figure
go do
something out,
this.
right?
What's going
Yeah,
on?
come
Yeah.
on. What's going on here? So I thought, well, I was very successful at a young age. It
Hmm.
wasn't what I was cracked up to be. Maybe I can write about that. Maybe that can
Right.
help people. And so I started a blog about redefining success. And within 3 months of starting this business, a publisher reached out and said, can I give you a book deal? I was like,
Oh.
wait, is this how it
Are
happens?
you
Okay.
serious?
I am serious. I said, yeah, if you're going to
Wow.
give me an advance, I will absolutely write that book. Yes, sir. So
Right.
I get this book deal, and I'm writing this book, and the editor herself was queer, and she said, I think your relationship is an important part of this book. You need to talk
Okay.
about your relationship.
Okay, I want to stop you here right there in that part because again, I think you're educating me and I want to be able to educate our listeners. So I said gay, I'm hearing queer. I'm just trying, let's get I want to really talk about what's appropriate and what's not appropriate because when you don't know, you just don't know and it's so easy to offend and I don't want to. When
No,
I
this
hear
is so
when I hear the word queer, because again, I'm back there in age, I think of it as being so toxic, so mean.
yes.
And so I wouldn't even say the word queer because I think it was always used in such a negative way when I heard that word early on. So can you tell me what's appropriate and what's not appropriate?
Absolutely. So, obviously every person has their own preference and experience, but in
Hmm.
general today, gay specifically designates usually somebody who identifies as male and is attracted to other males
Okay.
exclusively.
Okay.
Somebody who is, when we use the term queer, what we mean is anyone who is not cis, meaning not cisgender, the sex they were assigned at birth, they don't identify with that,
Say
or
that
they're
again. Say that again.
so, trans, you've heard of trans before?
Okay,
Yep.
yes.
It,
Uh-huh.
it means that cisgender means that you identify with the sex you had at birth. So I was
Okay.
assigned male at birth. I identify as male. I'm
Okay.
cisgender.
Okay.
So queer is gender or sexual orientation. And it doesn't mean
Okay.
that you're necessarily gay. It could be you're bisexual, you're pansexual, you don't identify with the label. It could be a
Okay.
whole. So when we say queer, today it's been reclaimed because you're right that generations ago, this was a really abusive term. This was a term to
Yes.
hurt people. And it's
Yes.
been reclaimed to say that I exist outside of being cisgender and straight. I'm
Okay.
somewhere else in that spectrum. And
Okay.
some people feel safe identifying with that because it can be fluid. You can say, I'm a little more bi, wait, I'm a little more gay, and you don't have to keep changing your label. You can just say, I identify as queer.
Okay, because one of the things that people have used words, and they still use words, whether you are gay or queer or whatever you want to call it, to weaponize people. And so I think that we're fortunate that we have a platform that we can educate. And I really want, whenever I'm talking or I'm meeting with someone, I love to make it intentional. And so I really want to educate our listeners. So okay, it's okay to say gay or queer.
Okay, to
And
say
so
gay, so say
it's
they
okay.
queer. And for me, I identify as queer because I am attracted to women still, and
Okay.
I am
Okay.
attracted to Garrett, and now increasingly some more men. And so it's fluid. And I kind of say,
Okay.
well, you know what? Bi doesn't work for me. Pan doesn't. If people want to call me that, that's fine. Gay doesn't work for me. But queer feels like it
Okay.
captures not straight, but somewhere else in there.
You're somewhere in the middle.
Somewhere
Somewhere
in the middle.
somewhere out
So,
there.
and
Okay.
it can change over life, right?
What you say it can change depending like the wind changes. How about the weather change?
That's
So
right.
okay.
If I fall in love with somebody, I fall in love with somebody. And so
And
that's
it,
why queer works for me.
okay, I love that. Well, I'm gonna throw a couple of questions out, and that's how our conversation is gonna go. And I think this conversation is gonna have a part two to us. Um, do you feel like you can be more sexually free now that you're out?
So,
Okay.
it's been a journey for me, as it is with
Okay.
everybody. But I think that what is fun about being queer is when we are in like the cis straight world, and even when I identified as straight, there are all these rules you don't realize that you're
Hmm.
supposed to follow, right? Like
Hmm. Right.
straight men aren't supposed to, I don't know, wear clothing too tight or wear pink or say that certain.
Yeah.
I mean, it's ridiculous, but
It's
there's so many
ridiculous.
rules. And when you're queer, like we had a wedding, a same-sex wedding, of course. Nobody cared what we did. There wasn't
Mm.
pressure like on the bride and the groom. It was kind of
Right.
you do you. You
It
do what
is
you
what it
want.
is. Right.
And it was
Exactly.
so liberating to feel like, oh, I can just explore anything I want to explore. And what's great about being with Garrett, because we're still together today, is our relationship started with such vulnerability that today we have to be vulnerable and honest about everything. So
Okay.
anytime one of us says, I'm into this or I want to try this new thing, we're like, okay, I'll be honest and tell you how I feel about that because that's how our relationship developed.
A question I want to ask, and this is something that I've always wondered when there is, and I use gay not to be disrespectful. It's just to me, it's just very hard for me to use the word queer because it was just in my
Let's use
generation.
gay today.
Yes. Okay. So when I think of gay and I think of male and female, gay males, gay females, do you think it's a little more toxic for females or catty for females than it is for males? Or do you think it's all about the same? You know how relationships are coming out?
Sure, I think that there's, different experiences. So I'm not going to say that
Okay.
one is better or less toxic than the other, but I think that we live in a world today that has a lot of fragility around masculinity. And
Mm-hmm.
so there is a lot of anger towards quote unquote gay men or gay cis
Okay.
men specifically, or even trans women, people who are assigned male at birth but identify as women. Because I think that it almost, it's very normalized, even eroticized for two women to kiss, right? That's like a
Mm-hmm.
fantasy for straight male culture. But gay men oftentimes have get a lot more violence towards them and a lot
So
more
do
hate.
you think that's because it's more homophobic people out there? Because I can't understand how one is more than the other. Uh, because either you have an issue with one, why don't you have an issue with the other? And it shouldn't matter that they are female or male.
I completely agree. I don't think we should have an issue with anyone, but I
Yeah.
think that the problem is men. We have a lot of fragility around masculinity, and men. There is no physical intimacy among straight men, right? They can't really
Okay.
hug or hold hands or anything. Whereas women, cis straight women, are
Mhm.
allowed to do some of those things, right?
Okay.
And so there's a lot of anger when you see, men being intimate or holding hands or doing things, and it feels like more of an affront to masculinity for whatever
But
reason.
but do you think part of that also is that where women can openly go to a restaurant, sit at a bar, have a drink by themselves or with their girlfriends, and not be in a relationship, where a male sometimes feels like I'm not going to have a drink or eat at the bar with another guy. I mean, do you feel that a lot of that comes straight from the man versus from the women having issues with a man and a man relationship?
Oh, I think it goes both ways, right? I
Okay.
think that men can have internalized homophobia or feel like I can't hug my buddies or go out for drinks, but I also think some women can also be,
Mm.
saying like that makes you less masculine, or our society as a whole has really, and I feel bad for a lot of straight men, really limited the amount of intimacy that can happen between straight men. And of course, just like women want to have their girlfriends and go out and have connection, men need that too. And what do we give men? We let them talk about sports or
Yeah.
sex, and that's pretty much it, right? That's all that
That's
men can
true.
bond over.
And I think a part of that is because we have, again, I'm not, for any of the listeners out here, I'm not trying to tell anyone how to be, what to be, come up. That's not what I'm saying. But I do think that we put a lot of pressure on men. We expect men to be a certain way. We expect a man, like you said, look at sports or talk about sex. Well, they need to have more of a conversation. And we talk more about that on our Saturday shows, where that's one of the reasons why the Love and Victory show have, from a man's perspective, every first Saturday, we go from a man's perspective because men don't really talk. There is not really a platform. They're starting to do it a little more now, but I do want to hear more because you guys hold so much in. And I think that that plays into everything that you do. I'm going to throw one more question out here, and I really want you to think about this question before you answer it. Uh, you claimed no, that's not the one I want to give you. How has vulnerability attributes? No, I don't think I want that one either. Do you feel like you can be more sexually free now that you're out? And how did you brand yourself so people were able to handle your sexuality better, or your choice of sexuality better?
Yeah, I think part of my journey has been realizing it's not my responsibility to,
Mm-hmm.
kind of do work for people. I
Mm-hmm.
think one part of my story I haven't gotten to yet, but
Yes.
I'd like to share is
Go ahead.
when my editor encouraged me to put in the book about my relationship, I turned in that manuscript and then I thought, oh crap, I have to tell people about this because
Mm-hmm.
they can't find it on the shelves of Barnes and Noble. I mean, my family knows, my close friends know, but my wider network doesn't know. And a lot of people who've come out can probably resonate with this, that it felt exhausting to tell everybody
Mm-hmm.
all at once and to
Right.
have to deal with all of their emotions and their reaction and being
Mm.
process,
That's
right?
right.
Feels so much easier. And I put this in my blog post, and it got picked up by a national publication. And when I woke
Mm-hmm.
up the next morning, 100,000 people had shared it. So
Oh my
millions of
God.
people had read this blog post.
It literally went viral.
It went, and this was like the days before like social media was big, right? This was 2014. So it went viral in this like emailing. People were
My
emailing this thing. I mean,
God.
some Facebook. And I woke up to probably hundreds or thousands of emails. NPR called me, Huffington Post called me. They wanted to talk about this story because at the time, sexual fluidity and pansexuality and bisexuality, these weren't topics like they are today. And they're not even great topics today. But back then, there was very little conversation about it. And so I mean, it was everything. I had people yelling homophobia to me. I had people telling me I'm not really queer and I don't belong. I had people asking me to speak at Pride. I mean, it was the
It was
gamut,
everything.
everything you
Oh
can imagine.
my God.
Yeah. And so I really, to be honest with you, I called my therapist right away. That's the first call.
I'm sure you did.
And then I shut down and I said, I don't want to do interviews about this. I don't want to talk about this. Like, you're asking me to defend a sexuality that I'm not clear about. And
I don't even understand what I'm going through.
yes.
Right.
And it's not
Exactly.
my job to package it up in the right way for you or make you feel comfortable because I don't know. And I
Because
think
the attacks were
honestly,
going to come directly to you. The
that's
moment you
right.
said something wrong. Exactly. Yeah.
And, you know, I think there was a lot of, to your point before, straight men who felt threatened by this story. Like, oh
Yes.
my God, what does this mean? You can't turn gay, blah, blah, blah. And so
Yes.
it became a big thing. And one thing that happened that was really interesting is these two, I'm going to call them kids. They actually weren't even that much younger than I am, but they were grad students. And they reached out to me and said, Mike, can we turn this into a musical? And
Hmm.
I said no to a lot of things, but I thought, well, this is like a school project, probably. Okay, fine.
No problem.
Well, I heard nothing about it. They came to Boston. They did interview me and Garrett. I forgot all about this. Well, 8 years later now, they just debuted at the New York Theater Festival. There's a musical about this story, and we went to see
That's
this in June.
amazing.
And it's off Broadway right now. Hopefully, they're going to take it to Broadway. But I'm telling you, Val, it was shocking. It was so powerful. I don't like
Yes.
musicals. I'll be
Yes.
honest with you.
Oh
I'm
God,
not a
I
musical
know. I
person.
know. I know. I know.
But what was so powerful about this is it was just the two characters, Mike and Garrett.
Mm-hmm.
And today, I've told this story about my story. I always skip over the first 6 months of the relationship because how do you talk about that? How do you really
Right.
get in there? This musical is only the first 6 months of the relationship.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
And there are so many moments where there's this one moment where they have intimacy for the first time. And Garrett's character screams, I'm not effing gay.
oh
And the
wow.
entire theater tensed up. And
Oh
I
wow.
watched everyone's mind and I thought, oh my God, most queer media is about externalized homophobia, which is
Right.
important. We all need to keep
Right.
talking about that.
Right. Right.
This
Right.
is about internalized homophobia. And it's
Mm-hmm.
making everybody here experience what we experienced in that
Yes.
moment.
Oh
And this can change
wow.
the world. This is powerful.
That is amazing. So I want to say this to you, Mike. I think that your story is a story that has to be told over and over and over because there is some young boy out there, a young or a man. I don't like to say young boys. I want to say there is a young man out there that is struggling with who he are and a young woman. And I think I really want to dive into this conversation a little more. I think this is not going to be a one part or even a two part because I really want to pull this onion back. I hope that, and of course, a podcast can't be too long because no one will listen to us. But it's
Right.
so much important information that you have here that I really want to have because there is not very many people that are confident enough, and I did say confident enough, to get up here and have this candid conversation. Can we do a part two?
We can absolutely do a part two, and let me just say that 10 years or 8 years ago when the article came out, I would not be having this conversation. So there's been some significant processing since then.
Yes, and I think that having this part two and really having clarity in the conversation and truly understanding you, I think we can really dig in and help some people of my generation and younger, so that we can all understand love and experience love without so much being judgmental. So what I would like to do, if you can, I'm going to have Abigail reach back out to you and coordinate your schedule so we can do a part two. Is there anything
Perfect.
you want to leave? Do you have one of your books there? I would like for you to share your book and how they can find your book, or
Sure,
would you
sure.
do that for me? And if you could give me a copy, we'll link it on our website, and we'll put the link. They go right to where they can purchase it at for you.
Absolutely. So yeah, the book that I wrote back came out in 2015 is Enough Already: Create Success on Your Own Terms. And this book
Mm.
is really about understanding what success means to you, your own subjectivity, and that most of us are going after things we actually don't want, and so we're not happy once we get it.
Okay, then. And where can they find the book at?
That book is on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever you buy books.
Okay, then. Well, again, I thank you so much for taking out time for me, not one time, two times, three times, as many times as you did to have this conversation. And I want to get back on here and we want to dig a little deeper. But until then, thank you so much. And I'm out. Goodbye.